Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World Live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT at autonomousmedia.net.
Let's turn to another aspect of the global agenda, this court case that you mentioned. Let's get right to it and explain to people, the nuts and bolts here. What is it that we're talking about?
We have a thing in this country called the Crown Prosecution Service, and it's the principal prosecuting authority for England and Wales, acting, it says here, independently in criminal cases investigated by the police and others. The CPS provides information, assistance and support to victims and prosecution witnesses. Now, that's very interesting because what we're finding is that there is no recourse for defense witnesses. So basically, what we have here is a system that is farming crime along with the police. And I've got a very interesting story about that and a little bit of a solution in some respects, and that's what we're after, isn't it? Solutions. So this ties in to this court case that I got involved in by accident, as you usually do. A friend of mine got charged with an assault. I was there during the whole time, and there was no assault. It was somebody who was drunk and fell over. But what we have is the police turning up, and they're looking for a victim. So they need the victim. So they interview the victim and they interview a relative of the victim who didn't actually see the assault. And all of a sudden, this is real and this person's been charged. The charges keep changing to get more and more serious, from attempting to wound somebody to actual malicious wounding, which is a very serious charge, over somebody who fell over. Now, the thing is that the Crown Prosecution Service is no different than any corporation. They need to get basically cases through the door. And it's very, very interesting because this lady was put onto this public information site, which is a charitable trust, and it's called Crimestoppers. And I think you have similar things in the US. It's basically a public site which masquerades and is a charity, actually. It's a charitable trust, which was probably started with good intentions. But what seems to have happened is that the police and basically nosy neighbours can report somebody and get them put up on there. And when you look at the things that people are actually in this most wanted Crimestoppers gallery for, it is ridiculous, but it's actually very traumatic for people who get put on there. And it's very difficult to get taken off. So what happened was this person got charged with this offence, and she was out of the country. She was in Nepal visiting her grandmother. The judge decided, in his infinite wisdom, even though it was a pre-trial hearing, to issue an arrest warrant. Within 2 weeks, these police had uploaded her profile with the help of Crimestoppers to put her in the most wanted criminals gallery. So there's a lady who's on holiday, and all of a sudden she's a most wanted criminal. Obviously, this is very traumatic. She doesn't understand the language. She doesn't understand what's going on, and she's petrified. So basically what they've done is they've created a criminal on the run because she was too scared to come back for the trial, which was not until 2 years later.
It's rather disturbing. It's like, here is the snitch broadcasting system, and regardless of what the real situation is, the for-profit court system, and a lot of people have said the only way to do battle with it here is to remove the profit motive from the system. Now, how do you do that? You force them to take you to a jury trial. You make it too expensive for them to prosecute you for these, low sort of crime things, which most people will just pay the fine in order to avoid the hassle, this kind of thing. And they're dependent upon you not bothering to execute any of the procedures that you could in order to make it more costly for them to collect on you, et cetera, et cetera. It is interesting at the very beginning of what you were saying also that, normally you would think a logical question would be, if I have committed a crime, then I would like to know what the injured party or damaged property is. And generally speaking, that seems to be a fair question. But that's not something you get to ask. A lot of times these things go through the system, and for one reason or another, you can end up completely unaware. that you're in the system, that you've been now a fugitive and everything else. And I'm sure this lady had no idea until, well, it was already kind of too late. She was already someone who had evaded justice, so to speak. I don't know what the term is.
Well, it's the lack of accountability, Chuck. The lack of accountability
right
at the top end. And that's interesting. We're talking about sort of middle management structure that's put in basically to send you around in circles so you don't get anywhere. And we have this with the Crown Prosecution Service here. Their complaint system and the Crown Prosecution Service itself, I just proved this, is not fit for purpose. They're an absolute disgrace, and the way they treat the public is with contempt. And they're quite aware of what I've been reporting on, and I've told them to put that back in the system and retrain their staff by listening to what's actually happened as a result of what they're doing. Now, not everybody who mans those phones is unhelpful. That some of them are very helpful, but they cannot do anything because they're putting you back into this automated system. But what I found was a solution, because this organization, Crimestoppers over here, is a charitable trust and has a board of trustees who have duties, liabilities, and responsibilities to the public as a charitable trust. Then I emailed their chair of trustees, and I informed him about the situation. In fact, I wrote him a letter, and I sent it to him on Friday, which was the 20th. By Monday night, when I got into London, I checked the Crimestoppers Kent website, the most wanted website. It's called Crimestoppers Most Wanted, and the region is Kent, which is an area of southeast England. Now, what was really interesting was, on the Friday night, my friend was up there, along with around 250 other people in Kent, this area of southeast England. And by Monday night, there was nobody in there apart from one person who was wanted in a different county.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at Kent Crimestoppers website. Here we go, you can see the URL, nice and secure. And as we can see, we're on the most wanted page. And according to Kent Police, or whoever it is that's putting this stuff up on here, there's only one person. And a few days ago, there was 250 people on here. So the question is, what happened to the rest of them? If you want to know the answer, you need to stay in touch at windowsontheworld.net, because on there we will be doing a show that tell you exactly what happened to these people and why. It's a bit of a story. I think you'll like it.
So in other words, Kent Police had removed their entire most wanted section, and the result of that was they must have had a big internal shake-up to have this kind of very quick result. And it's all to do with the fact that I emailed the chair of trustees of this charity, because he's liable for all the nonsense that's put up there. And what they were doing was they were using these people's pictures who were most wanted with headlines in sort of online local newspapers that said things like wanted for rape, robbery and people trafficking. And of course, my friend's picture, her little face, was in the top right-hand corner. And of course, she wasn't guilty of any of these things or indeed anything else. And when I informed the chair of trustees about this, he's obviously gone ballistic with the police and said, what the hell do you think you're doing? We could all be sued. And I've heard about the background of this case, and it's shocking. Get her off and bring the rest of them down as well. And that's exactly what happened.
Well, that is odd because, you know, in the U.S., we have had trouble finding out who is actually accountable for this. Because when you make a public records request, and I know this, it's coincidental that I actually know this, but you make a public records request, and different states have slightly different procedures once again, okay, because Freedom of Information Act is a national thing, all right? So there are public records requests. You try and make a request to find out about this particular system, and what you'll be given basically is that the police pretty much email information to an email address. And that's it. That's all they have on it.
Yes, the automated system is to send you round in a circle, and we have a thing over here called data protection, and they use that against the public. For instance, I requested on behalf of a solicitor who'd already requested an audio recording of somebody who was in custody, same case I'm talking about here. There was anomalies in the transcript, and it looked as though things had been added in and many things had been left out. And this person's first language was not English. She wasn't offered an interpreter. And she was deprived of her medicine. She's clearly in distress. And the legal representative would not let her get her medicine, which is a breach of her human rights. Now, when I requested this CD and the lawyer requested it, they use the same tactics, Chuck. What they do is they say to me, under the Data Protection Act, I'm not allowed to have it. Well, I never asked for it. So they reverse it on you. The lawyers asked for it, and then they said, I've asked for it. No, I didn't ask for it. And that was the Independent Police Complaints Commission, by the way, which is another useless organisation, not fit for purpose, which sends you round in a circle. And
see, I love that phrase. I love that phrase, not fit for purpose, because once again, they represent to you, this organization is here to be an advocate for you, right? So they might even send you to, if you go to these people, they'll help you to request something. But what they usually do is structure a request that is counterproductive. And I don't understand how it is that, that people keep going through this process where it's like, well, we'll send you to our friend over here who is effectively going to make it so it's a useless request, and then tell you that even though you are in a position of advocacy without, you have to have some sort of express written permission of the individual that has been recorded or whatever in order to get something, like, because this has happened with trying to get surveillance video, quite often. When an incident occurs, and I do call it an incident, not a crime, when an incident occurs, there is, some recording of it because we're so inundated with surveillance, right? So maybe, let's just say it occurred near a business. The police or the sheriff will come and collect the surveillance video from that business, who might have a camera outside. It might have caught it, even though it wasn't on their property. It was next door, whatever. These things wind up in the hands of the police, and then trying to get it is a process and a game all in itself. And if you request it the wrong way, it's very
interesting, Chuck, because that takes us back to what we started with at the beginning of the show, in that if there's a terrorist attack, we never get to see the CCTV. So the London 7/7 bombings, the Israeli company Verint were running all the cameras on London Underground. And did we get to see anything that happened there, or did anyone get to see anything that happened there? I actually wonder if our own intelligence services were allowed to see it, because nothing was ever seen of that CCTV. And every time you go into one of these places, into these metros or undergrounds, they say, for your safety and security, CCTV is monitoring images throughout the system. Well, if it's for your safety and security, how come when there's a terrorist attack, we never see it? And how come when you request this so-called CCTV, the cameras are often not working, and there's no actual footage? You try getting the CCTV, it's impossible in most cases. So, yes, that's another thing. But this particular case, what they do is, they send you around in this circle, but we've actually got them on many things now. And a lot of it came about because this actual organization, Crimestoppers, is a charitable trust. And that's what's really interesting about it. These corporations are completely aloof to all that, because they are just companies, and a lot of them are just limited liability companies. They're basically limited companies. So they don't really have liability. This is the thing with a trust. They have personal liability. So I wrote to Lord Ashcroft, who is a multi-millionaire, who started off this site in the 1980s. And I'm sure he started it with good intentions. I'm sure he started it to actually catch criminals. But now it's become a bit of it's a Trojan horse, really. And it's also got people on there who have been on it for years and years on end, who don't seem to have really done anything, and most of them are out of the country, so it does need cleaning. But I did write to him, and the result of that was that she was taken off this Crimestoppers website, again, along with 250 other people. So that's what I found very interesting about this, in that personal liability was taken very, very seriously by somebody at the top. And it's I think it's shaken up the police and helped this case quite a lot, because this is a very, very serious case. When the police came round, I asked them to come in. One of them pushed me in the chest. The other tried twisting my arm. Now, I was going to tell them to get off the property. The lady who'd been accused of an assault was filming the police. The tablet was taken into custody, and we got the tablet back the next day. All the files had been wiped. It hadn't been logged in or out. So that's perverting the course of justice. And there was the anomalies in the transcript. The whole thing was basically what I call crime farming. And we're in an area of the South.
Wait a minute, because what you just said, you went by really quickly, and I want to make this clear. When you say it wasn't logged in, you mean to tell me that it was not officially accounted for as a piece of evidence, or actually being taken into custody as a piece of property?
Chain of evidence was completely ignored. So basically what happened was, so these two bent police have arrested her, dragged her off, taken the tablet off her, and at some time, either in the station or in their car, they've wiped the files of the assault where I was assaulted. And because she's a foreigner, they gave her back the tablet in a ripped open evidence bag, which has to be logged in and out, which was completely blank. In other words, it's not been logged in or out, so there's been no chain of evidence. So it's just been handed back by a desk sergeant who's got a bag that was ripped open and given to her. And that's how much respect that these people have got for the public. So they probably do this routinely all the time. And it was absolutely shocking, because I tried twice to give evidence, and I was thrown out of the station the next night. So I was assaulted the first time I tried to give evidence. And on the next time I tried to give evidence, when I picked her up from the station, I was physically basically thrown out of the station. They used an excuse because I wanted to use the toilet again. And they said, our desk sergeant doesn't want you in here, get out. So two of them surrounded me and basically told me to leave the building. And that was because I was a defense witness, which brings us back to what this is all about.
Well, one second again, I need to ask another question. Okay. I'm sorry, Mark, because I want to make sure I'm clear here. When someone is offering evidence to a policing agency in America, this is the way it's supposed to work. Yes. When you're doing that, it's supposed to be taken seriously. They are supposed to question you and record said questioning. If they believe that it is a piece of evidence which is relevant to the case itself, they attach it to the case number and create an affidavit and some sort of recording, whether it be on paper or tape recording or video, whatever it may be, in order to preserve it. Okay, and then that is entered into the investigation and is later handed to the prosecution. This is the way the process should go. And what you're telling me is you went to the police station, said, look, here's the incident, here's the date, I am a witness, and I would like to offer my account to you. And they absolutely refused to take it. Is that correct?
Well, it's even worse than that, because what they actually did was, when I said, come in, I will tell you what happened, their idea was to assault me and arrest me as well, because they told my friend who was accused of an assault that that's what they were going to do. When they had her in the car, they said, we're going to arrest him too. Now, the reason for that is so I couldn't give evidence. So that, in other words, I was a defendant and not a witness. So we were both defendants. And this went through the whole process. Even during the court, it was agreed by all parties. We're jumping about here a bit, Chuck, I suppose. We haven't got much time. But the thing is that in the court, it was agreed by the prosecution, the defense, and the Crown Prosecution Service that all reference to the police would be kept out of the case and out of the court, because I had stated to my friend's lawyer that I wanted the police in court because I wanted to bring forward the evidence I had and she had that I was assaulted, and she'd filmed it and was going to produce the blank evidence bag in court and try and get the files recovered. However, the lawyer said, probably not a good idea. The police will lie and the jury will probably believe them, which was fair comment. So what I wasn't ready for was the judge, in summing up, told the jury that myself and my friend had been aggressive towards the police after the alleged assault and told them to leave. And he just read it out as though it was normal. And the barrister, we have a thing called legal aid here, which is basically, if you can get it, it's very low-level representation. So you get a barrister, and they usually go, oh, it's a legal aid case, I won't really bother. So we had a barrister who was worse than useless. Who actually
public defender in America, same
public
thing.
Defender in America, that's right. And the judge read that out with no objection from the barrister, and obviously undermined my testimony even more. So it's a very interesting situation, because I'm hearing this from more and more people. And there was a report in mainstream media over here that in 55.5% of examined cases by the inspectorate of the CPS, it was found that defense evidence, or as they call it, unused material, was being left out of cases. Now, in the case that I was involved in, it went worse than that. It went to the point that police are actually creating the crimes, because in my case, they assaulted the only defense witness in the hope that I would struggle back and they could arrest me for assaulting the police. That's what they would have done, because they were very disappointed that I told them to get off the property. And I just shouted, that's assault, get off the property. And I think they were so shocked that they actually did it, but they just dragged her off in handcuffs, and they deleted the evidence either in the car when they dropped her off at the station, or in the custody suite, wherever they do it. You know, they've got plenty of room in this particular police station. It's like a bunker that you can't get in or out of. So it's the accountability that's gone. And once you get into these organizations like the Crown Prosecution Service and then this Crimestoppers website, which exacerbated the situation, there's no recourse at all. But this is where I wanted to read out this letter to Lord Ashcroft and the Board of Trustees, because this being a charitable trust, it actually worked. So I said, dear sir, I wish to bring to your attention some very serious issues regarding the Crimestoppers website and the criteria for uploading people's photographs to most wanted by the police, because it's actually the police that upload them. But interestingly, the site have what they call publisher's liability. So there are many liabilities here. And as we discussed earlier, the defendant had been libeled by this libelous headline in a newspaper with her picture on it. So I think this is where the actual furore erupted within Crimestoppers management and then Kent Police, who have actually taken down their whole gallery of most wanted. So in other words, with one email, Chuck, we removed 250 of the most wanted people in the county, which is quite good going, really.
Yeah, quite remarkable. You can solve that many crimes with one email.
With one email.
Yes.
Over a weekend. It all happened very, very quickly. So we'll carry on with this. The emails below make it absolutely clear that in this case, and possibly many more, the person whose life has been ruined and trial has been prejudiced should never have been placed on the Crimestoppers Most Wanted, as at the time she was placed on the site and paraded like a dangerous criminal. She was, in fact, visiting her grandmother in Nepal. Miss Rye was placed on the site in March 2016. Her trial had no date set and was eventually heard in her absence in June 2017. So she was on it for all that time. It's only just come off now, Chuck, and that's the 20th of October. So March 2016 to October the 20th, 2017.
It's a year and a half.
That's right.
And in addition, here's another thing, too. I don't know if you have this rule in the UK, but again, what about prejudicing or, tainting the potential jury pool?
Absolutely. I wanted to get to that, Chuck. Let me get to that point. Yeah? That's really, really, I'm so glad you brought that up. And it carries on. I said, as chair of trustees, I'm requesting your urgent response to this matter. There was no evidence against Miss Ryan. Witness evidence was blocked and evidence withheld and destroyed by Kent Police. Miss Ryan was also paraded as most wanted by Kent online with their libelous heading, which they created, wanted for rape, robbery, people smuggling, and more. This is just one of many issues in this case, which is now under investigation. As chair, I request that you honour your position as trustee and act accordingly. Any response, such as "it's all down to the police," is not acceptable. I am holding you and the Board of Trustees to your oath and duty. This matter is in the public interest and follows the framing of an innocent man by two malicious and lying PCSO officers. These are basically like traffic wardens. They're called community support officers, yeah? So they're not even police. And they uploaded his picture to Crimestoppers, which they obviously had access to the site. The police have access to the Crimestoppers site. And this is another thing that's really needs looking into, is that any bent policeman can put your picture up there. This is what they did with her, because it wasn't a serious thing. It was like an allegation of an assault. And all of a sudden, she's the most wanted woman in Kent. It was ridiculous, you know. And yeah, and this guy they said he was wanted for a hit and run offence, and those two went to prison. So this guy has quite rightly, Lord Ashcroft, got really, really angry about it. And I did include the emails, and this was to Mr. Thorburn at Crimestoppers from the defendant's solicitor. Dear Mr. Thorburn, we write in relation to our above-named client, who appears on your website as Kent's most wanted. We're slightly surprised at this, as it was explained in open court at Maidstone that Miss Rye is in Nepal, her home country, where she is looking after her 95-year-old grandmother. It is not clear, therefore, why Kent Police have decided to pass you her details. She's a woman of good character who's pleaded not guilty, and a trial date has been set in January 2017. It was actually put off, obviously. It wasn't till June. We are a little concerned that the presentation of her as a most wanted criminal may prejudice her case in front of the jury. Perhaps you could inform us as to how her details appeared on your website and whether you can now give some consideration to taking this down, now that we have supplied you with the information above. So then we get back an email from the warrants coordinator of Kent Police. And this is at the Wanted Persons Bureau. So this guy at the Crimestoppers site has said, basically, it's not me who uploaded this picture. I authorised it on behalf of the police, but the police uploaded it. So they say here at the warrants section, dear sir, the information we have is that your client has failed to attend court for a Category A serious offence and therefore fits the criteria for Crimestoppers. Our team are unaware of any court attendance and no revocation of the warrant has been issued. Our relentless pursuit policy means that your client will remain on the Crimestoppers list until she's brought before the court. So he writes back and he says...
One piece of clarification real quickly. A warrant has not been issued. And a Class A offense, does that mean that this is like a felony, and like we would call it a felony here in the U.S., as opposed to, because a simple assault doesn't sound like a felony.
Well, they turned it into one, you see, because they kept escalating the charges to malicious wounding, which was ridiculous.
Oh, okay. I understand.
The point was that the lawyer was in court. It was a pre-trial hearing. There was no need for them to issue a warrant because the court case wasn't for another 2 years.
Right.
It wasn't like she hadn't turned up for the trial, Chuck.
Well, no, she didn't fail. Yeah, she didn't fail to appear, and also she wasn't being charged with, I assume, a Class A. Well, it was.
They're saying it's a Class A offence. Now, this is what we need to get to next. This is his next email. He says, "Can you tell me the list of Category A offences? Also, do you have any policy in place that deals with possible prejudice in relation to jury trials, as potential jurors may have seen the website in question? Would it make a difference if the warrant was backed for bail? Although the offence may be on your Category A list, is any account taken for the circumstances before placing somebody on the most wanted list? Trusting you can answer my questions." Now, the warrants and tasking at Kent's Police write back a single line, and this is to a lawyer, right? This is to a lawyer. They say, if you require any further information, please contact the Freedom of Information Unit by visiting the Kent Police website. So in other words, you're her lawyer. Go to the website and look at frequently asked questions.
Wow.
I know. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, you'd figure that that's where you would end up after you went to the FAQ site. You know, a part of the site is you would end up with the warrant officer. But no, I guess not. Okay. Yeah, there's that circle you were talking about. Go ahead.
Well, it got worse and worse and worse because I've been trying to deal with this, and they just use the same tactics. And Kent police are absolutely corrupt. Their internal system is incredibly corrupt. They will ignore you. They will undermine you. They will lie. They absolutely have acted in a most despicable way here, but it's all coming out now because I've written to their chief constable, and he's in a bit of a difficult situation because, and only because, this chair of trustees of the Crimestoppers website has gone absolutely ballistic with the police. And you can see that that's happened because of the removal of 250 people from their most wanted gallery. Now, we have to remember that the police have their own most wanted criminals. Yeah, these are people who they're actually looking for. So this Crimestoppers site, it's really like a kind of snoopers and entertainment site in some ways now. And I don't think it was ever meant to be that. But some of the people have been on there since 1999. There's a girl on there who looks about 18 on the picture. So she must have been about 10 at the time, who's wanted in connection with somebody who was selling cigarettes that Her Majesty's Customs and Excise believe that they weren't legitimate. In other words, they were selling them without paying any tax on them. And this is the sort of crimes that are on there. There's people wanted for tax evasion, but a lot of it's not proven. And a lot of them have already been in prison for it. And they're now going after their assets. But most of them are not in the country. So the whole site, there's all these most wanted people that aren't really wanted at all. But it must be very distressing for them to be on there, you see, because if you're a foreigner and you go to another country, and all of a sudden, you're on a site that says Crimestoppers most wanted. What are you going to draw from that? You're going to go, oh, my God, it's like they're going to hang me or something, you know?
Well, you know, and the other thing is, I got to say this. It was Eric Garner in New York City that was, selling cigarettes loose, you know, without paying taxes on them, which is technically the offense. And they killed him. Right there in the street, basically killed him in a scuffle. It's really the alleged law enforcement becoming extremely lawless. Wow, you know, and speaking of the oaths of office, it's extremely relevant to note what the difference is between that charitable trust and somebody who takes, you know, a government oath of office. Because, you know, again, when I read the oath that police officers of all sorts, I don't know about these community policing people, but police officers who officially have that job are supposed to take an oath as well. And I wonder about that. How about holding them accountable to their oaths? You know, Mark, what about that part of it?
They don't seem to think they have an oath, and they act as corporate employees now. And we've obviously got huge privatization within the police. This company called G4S, which is obviously a worldwide company, are now involved in every aspect of the so-called judicial process, whether it's taking you to prison in one of their vans, whether it's frisking you as you go into court, or whether it's actually appointing you your lawyer, because they do that as well. So they've got things quite sewn up. And, of course, Theresa May's husband, the present Prime Minister's husband, has huge interests in G4S, and they're taking over the police here. But just as a little coda to all this, I spent the day in court on the 27th of June. I was obviously recorded as being in court. I gave evidence to the jury, the judge, the prosecution, the defence, and, of course, the Crown Prosecution Service recorder. So when I asked for some information about the case and wanted to put information forward about the case, my reply from the Crown Prosecution Service was, we have checked this case and you are not named as a witness on our records. So I wasn't even in court. So for some reason, on that day of the 27th of June this year, I walked in the court, I gave evidence, yet I was invisible.
Well, that's quite the trick, Mark. In the last, I'm impressed. In the last couple of minutes here, I'm sorry, I can't do anything but mock the fact that this is supposed to be, a legal system that is meant to remedy things. Anyway, in the last couple of minutes here, where does this whole situation stand? Because we're going to come to the end of the hour real quick.
Yeah, well, it sort of stands at the moment with the police not replying to the email that I sent on Sunday, which was an official letter to the chief constable, and it's their chance to remedy. And it'll be interesting to see what they do in light of them basically being given a very, very hard time and rather humiliated by this chair of trustees of Crimestoppers. So it will be very interesting to see what they do. They have acted so despicably. I mean, I've had interactions with police before who've been bent here and there, and you think, oh God, do they all lie? But these particular police have lied all the way through. They've acted in a deceptive way. They've created a crime. They've buried all the evidence from the defence, and they've created basically a huge thing out of nothing, something that didn't happen. And even the only prosecution witness didn't see an assault. So there was no witnesses to the assault. So this is pretty scary stuff, but it goes into what we were talking about with this report about the CPS. And it's incredible. The recording of sensitive and non-sensitive evidence was routinely poor, it said, adding that prosecutors in turn were failing to challenge the poor recording of material and carry out their duty to consider what to hand over to the defence throughout a case. So in other words, we didn't even have the interview of this lady who's clearly in distress, and the transcript has got no number of a recording on it and no officer present. So we're talking about something that could actually be a microcosm of something that's happening all over the country. And that's what I wanted to do, was to get people, especially in the UK, because obviously this has happened here. But to your listeners as well, they might be interested to know about what's happening here. Things are getting to the point where there is actually no judicial system left as we knew it. We're just talking about this corporate system, and we're going to have these massive prisons where people are going to be locked up and made to engage in slave labor, and that's the future. So we're creating as many criminals as possible. That's what it seems to be. Unless we get some resolution to this, it's an absolute indication of that. But we'll see what happens, Chuck.
Well, I got to tell you that when you describe evidence being created in this way, what it does is immediately jump to my mind the fact that this is not the way it is in the law books. You would have to have a recording and a verifiable individual who recorded it, a mechanism by which it was recorded, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, a judge who is placed in that position of trust there is supposed to toss it out of court. But as we've seen in America and everywhere else, the justice system has failed, and maybe there is a greater agenda all over the planet being exerted on the local level in this way. Mark Windows, go to windowsontheworld.net, and I'm sure that Mark will be following up on this story more and more over there. Probably some YouTube stuff as well, right, Mark?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think this is quite a good one, Chuck, because it really puts things into perspective, and things that we talk about sort of happened. So I've got a very good log of it all. Thanks for having us on, Chuck.
Absolutely. Mark Windows once again. Stay tuned to the O Chelli Effect. We'll be right back.
Join me, Mark Windows, with Tony Hurst for Windows on the World live every Sunday 9 to 11 p.m. GMT at autonomousmedia.net.